Welcome, one and all, throughout time and space, for this episode of Weebs on the Weekends, the podcast where we break down the anime news highlights of the week and give a retrospective look on an anime that premiered 10 years ago. Today's episode will cover the anime news for the fourth week of August 2021, as well as our thoughts on whether to resurrect or rebury the 2011 anime adaptation for the Marvel's comic series known as Blade. My name is Sam Martinez. I'm a part-time weeb, full-time automail mechanic, and with me as always is my co-host Jay Johnson, a part-time weeb, full-time English language sensei. Now, Jay, I just want to talk a little bit about the Netflix adaptations, or not necessarily adaptations, but the Netflix shows that were posted on Netflix earlier this week that have super heavy anime vibes. It was the new Witcher movie called Nightmare of the White Wolf, and they also had added the English dub for both Shaman King and Eden Zero. So I'm kind of thinking about going and checking those out. But Jay, did you have a chance to see The Witcher? I can't remember what your thoughts were on that series.
I haven't gotten around to it. I was seeing all the hype of it online this week, and it just kind of completely caught me off guard because we didn't have any news stories on it. It kind of went under the radar. We've kind of been following the Cyberpunk 2077 Edge Runner adaptation that's going on next year, I believe. But this Witcher series completely just slipped under my radar.
This is mine too. I didn't realize that it was out there until it was out there on Netflix, but it was a good surprise for me because it was on a day that I needed it.
Yeah, which is odd because of how much acclaim that who played Geralt most recently, Superman, Henry Cavill. Yeah, Henry Cavill did such an excellent job in that role. It was confirmed for a second season. The throw a coin to your Witcher song charted off the scale for quite a couple of weeks. So it's surprising that Netflix didn't really push this. What else has been really competing in this season from the next Netflix production? I can't really name anything, but I was actually thinking you were going to talk about the What If series that Disney has been putting out. But
those have been good. Do you want me to say anything on that, or have you seen any of What If series?
I have not seen any of them, so maybe just a non-spoiler impression. Is it worth the watch? Because we were watching Loki together. We didn't catch Captain Falcon and the Winter Soldier together. I didn't watch WandaVision. So this next phase of Marvel, I'm kind of actually not really participating in, especially with theaters being closed where I am, so I can't see Shang-Chi. I'm probably not going to see Spider-Man. Really hoping that I can see Spider-Man when it comes out because everyone has been spoiling the trailer that released earlier this week, and I'm kind of sad that I know somewhat of who's appearing in it now because I follow these news sites, and my favorite article that I've seen this week was, it had no spoiler alert. It was character A, played by character B, makes a surprise appearance in the new Spider-Man trailer. And I'm like, oh, just no spoiler warning. It's you think that over the past 10 years with how Marvel has conducted its business, the industry would have learned how to not spoil things. But no, this character is playing this character, and they showed up in the trailer, and even the thumbnail for the Spider-Man trailer has a character that, if you didn't know anything about the movie, spoils something for you. So, yeah, but all these Marvel properties. Yeah, so what about the What If series so far?
So, just to say, Sony has been keeping tabs on the release for the new Spider-Man movie. Apparently it was leaked by somebody else, and so since the leak happened, Sony went ahead and released the trailer earlier. But to go on to the What If series, I would say I've been watching it with a mutual friend of ours, and the What If series is really good. The writing is very solid. Not only that, but it is based off of actual what if storylines that had happened. I'm trying to think. For instance, there's going to be an episode about Marvel Zombies. There has been I think multiple comic book lines about what if Marvel Zombies, whether it's Captain America or Iron Man, if they become zombies, things like that, like what happens. Like because they play around with the multiverse, they do a lot with the What If series. And not only that, but this does the What If series does do the MCU justice, and they do the characters justice as well. And depending on like the different situations, like they stick true to the characters. So when you're watching a What If series, realize that like when you see a character, they're going to be the character that they were portrayed as. So they're going to continue to be that way. So it's very good. I would say a bit of a warning though. Before Chadwick Boseman had passed away, he did do some lines as T'Challa, and there's an episode that they do with him where they tell you up front. And when I'm watching it with my friend, like both of us kind of got choked up because of what Chadwick Boseman sort of meant to the black community in that regard. So I do want to like give that bit of a spoiler warning. Not I guess like a spoiler watch, I suppose. Not really like a spoiler warning. Would that be considered a spoiler warning? I don't know. Just know that like just to be prepared for that particular episode when it shows up.
Right. Technically, it's a trigger warning because you might get triggered. Technically, so it's more of that. It's like, yeah, it might hit you right in the feels, given that he only has a few movies that are out there, given that he was under a lot of treatment at the time. So I believe floating in the Hollywood system, there's like maybe two other films that he had time to film at the time of his passing. So either they're going to recast those roles or how they're going to manage that his appearance in those movies, because again, they're trying to be very respectful for what work he did at the very end of his life. And hopefully those movies do come to surface, but this might be a thing of this Marvel series might be the very last thing that Chadwick Boseman appears in, and that's why it hits you in the feels.
And I'm trying to think if there was anything else. Oh, like the reason why I had even brought up like Netflix, just to go back to The Witcher, because like I do remember seeing some articles for it, but like when they were talking about it, they made it seem like it was like a 5-minute thing, not like an actual feature length film. And I just bring it up because like when you're watching it, like it has a lot of anime vibes, or it's very heavily influenced by anime, and I was not expecting that for this series. It's sort of like in line of, I think it was Dota, Dragon's Blood, and some of the other animated featured films that Netflix had put out there as well. So I just want to suggest that and have that go out there. Is there anything that you would like to add or say before we head on to the news, Jay?
Oh no, I think that's a perfect segue into the news.
Awesome. So we're going to segue on to the news again. For you listeners out there, just to remind you, time codes are in the dibbly-doo box. And now on to the news. And we want to start off with saying a happy 10-year anniversary to one of our favorite, or one of our most talked about studios, Studio Trigger. It turned 10 years old on August 22nd this year, 2021. They had released a tweet about hoping that their future projects will help lift up everybody's spirits during these pandemic times. And they also released a compilation sort of short film. Well, not really a short film, but just a sort of like a promo video of all their works, just sort of celebrating all that Trigger Studios have done, such as Little Witch Academia, Kill la Kill, Ninja Slayer, Brand New Animal, SS Gridman, and things of the like. So, Jay, what are your thoughts on Trigger being 10 years old this year?
It's odd that I can't really separate Studio Gainax from Studio Trigger. I mean, there's a particular reason, because the founders of Trigger were employees at Gainax, and the reason why they were able to launch their studio is because they did, or they're responsible for Gurren Lagann, which is under the title of Studio Gainax. It's not actually a Studio Trigger anime, even though everything in Gurren Lagann is Studio Trigger technically.
Pretty much, yeah.
It's odd that Kill la Kill is actually their first project or production that happened back in 2013, like 2 years after their studio form, which again is usually the timeline or the life creation cycle for an anime. So they created their studio and got right into producing Kill la Kill. And even in these 10 years, it's very surprising that they've only done like not a handful. Let's say, okay, is a handful less than 10? Well, you have 10 fingers. So, okay, a little bit more
I
than
would
a handful.
say, yeah.
So it's odd that most recently they did SSS done in Xenon, which we've kind of dropped off with this year. And so again, that's not a thing of like talking about the quality of their studio, but they've done 3 films so far. Like you speak very highly of Promare, as
Yeah.
well as like some of their ONAs like Infernal Cop, which I'm very much big fan of, and I think their like best work is in Space Patrol Luluco. So there's a lot to break down, and I would love to talk a little bit more about this. If I knew that their 10-year anniversary was this year, I would have pushed for a special, because the reason why Studio Trigger and Gainax are so like intertwined in my mind is because Gainax hasn't produced an anime since 2015.
It's because Gynex broke up, didn't they? Or are they still around? I thought that they broke up because of the legal battles that happened with Evangelion.
Exactly. So they still exist as a company, but they're in this like legal stalemate, I guess, or holding pattern that hasn't been resolved. So like I know them from Fooly Cooly, but it's odd that those two companies are just solely in my mind, and I think they're one, even though they're not. And Studio Trigger has kind of taken the place of Gainax over the past decade. Studio Trigger is just like a maple stay, I guess, of the anime community, because they usually produce like a good Studio Trigger anime every 2 years technically. So
yeah, it's
again, like
every
they
other
come
year.
out year after year. We talked about the podcast started right when Brand New Animal premiered last year. I would say probably S tier studio, but it's like one of those situations of their aesthetic is so theirs that they have a ranking system within inside their own filmography. So like I put Space Patrol and Luluco like S tier, and then like Kitsniver's pretty middle tier, and then Witch Academia wasn't well received because of all the Netflix jailing that they did for their anime when they were like coming to understand what anime's influence was going to be. But do you have a favorite Studio Trigger property, Sam?
So far right now, it's probably Brand New Animal and Little Witch Academia. I didn't realize I've seen images for Inferno Cop before, but I didn't realize that was them. I think I seen images of Inferno Cop on Adult Swim actually, or if it wasn't Inferno Cop, it was something else that was akin to Inferno Cop. And you have mentioned Space Patrol Luluco plenty of times before. I haven't had a chance to watch it. Oh, and another thing too, I didn't realize that was a work of theirs either. Was when supernatural battles become commonplace. I freaking loved it, and I didn't know why I loved it so much until right now. So I would say like it's up there with one of my favorites as well.
Okay, because that's easily a missed property of theirs, because I think that followed up Kill la Kill. Now I'm thinking about their filmography history, but like that was like either their second or third project, and I think that was at the time of like figuring out what Studio Trigger was. So everyone was like, "Oh, they did Kill la Kill with the naked girls, magical girls transforming in clothes, being sentient beings," and they were like, "What are we supposed to make of this?" kind of thing.
Did a little bit of gushing on Studio Trigger, and just gonna continue on with some more good news. It was announced that the new episode, or that the second half of Attack on Titan's final season, will be released in January 2022 with episode 76 titled Danzai, aka Judgment. And they had released like a promo video supporting it, and oh my goodness, I am just ready for the finale. What about you, Jay?
Because I am anime only, it's like the promo video was very like set inside the symbolism that probably the manga fans were like, "Oh, I know what that is," kind of thing. They're like playing to the mystery elements. of the series, like in the final lead up to the end, because there's really no way to tell how Attack on Titan is going to end from like the anime standpoint. Is that the last season kind of just took this hard right turn because like each season kind of has its own genre defining
Yes.
feel to it. Like there's the action adventure, there's the mystery, there's the psychological thriller. Now this is like a very dark drama essentially. And the only thing that's really catching my attention with this season, or it would be winter 2022, is that it's going to be competing with JoJo. Stone
Yes,
Ocean
that's
is going to
right.
be competing with our Arforetta, Arforetta, that isekai with the dude with the gun arm and the bunch of lollies around him for season two, as well as something I didn't know because of Crunchyroll or for the Crunchyroll Awards is the Princess Connect season two, which apparently is getting a lot of hype around it too. So that's the only thing about this that's really catching my attention is that like the low barrier for Attack on Titan to show off. So it's going to be looking like in a situation of
It's
hopefully
going to be
JoJo doesn't get overshadowed or Attack on Titan doesn't overshadow JoJo because they're like two beloved properties. And you know how the
Mhm.
anime community is going to be. They're going to be like, oh, you should be watching this. No, you should be watching this. So I'm very interested to see that in the first 2 weeks of January that this is going to come out properly because last year Attack on Titan premiered like a month early, so we can say it had big PP energy when it was premiering
Yes.
and overcasting everything. But now with this season, they're like doing it at the height of premiere, so I'm looking forward to it to see how it rolls out.
Yeah, I was a bit concerned, like you, like whether or not it's going to be a repeat of last year, where Attack on Titan's out there, and we have other shows trying to do their due diligence. Because I think it was Jujutsu Kaisen was happening around that same time too, and but because of Attack on Titan, it was just getting all the hype from that. And I think if I feel like JoJo is going to be, if there's going to be competition, JoJo is going to be a strong competition for Attack on Titan. But if it's going to be staggered, like you say that it is, then I feel as though like it's going to be paced out in a good way where people can enjoy both. I mean, we're in the day and age where you can essentially stream and watch the episodes in whatever order you want to. So it's not like back in the day when you're essentially just a slave to the broadcasting schedule, you know? Onwards to other news. We're going to be segueing to a little bit of live action stuff here. And the next few news that I have is sort of catered to you, Jay, because you are a big fan of stage plays. Just wanted to say that My Hero Academia's third stage play, which is titled My Hero Academia: The Ultra Stage, Honmono no Hero plus Ultra, will run in the Tokyo Dome City Hall from December 3rd to December 12th. And it's going to be in Tokyo from the 24th through the 26th. This was slated to appear last year during July 2020. However, due to the pandemic, it got pushed back. And just the article goes on to say how the other two were released back in, I believe it was 2019. I'm trying to remember when the other one was. Yeah, the other stage plays. The first stage play was back in 2019, and it was also available for live viewing Japan from August 13th through August 19th. So, oh, that's an interesting thing too. I didn't realize that they would stream it online. What are your thoughts on that, Jay? Having stage plays like that being streamed online for people to view it.
Again, it's one of those things of how the world has kind of shifted their mentality about how media should be presented to more online facilities or services. You know, the industry did it for a lot of the con events. Same thing
Mhm.
with theaters is that they need to have their audience and they can't have people packed into theaters anymore. And with like popular how popular stage plays are in Japan, it just seems like
Mhm.
Of course, they would have to cater to that because it's one of those industries that could easily be killed by everything going on with the virus and quarantine restrictions. So I'm glad that they decided to do this move instead of really pushing Japan is safe again, even though the a lot of vaccination sites opened up this week as well. And one of the big news that came out this week of Japan is that the Shibuya vaccination center was just overtaxed.
Yeah.
And it was like lines and lines and lines of people showing up, and it just completely got crowded out, or they couldn't meet the demand that was presented to them. So again, like, not any hard criticism against the Japanese government or anything or mismanaging things, but it is a situation of, this is one of those things that shows that the situation hasn't resolved itself, as well as probably not getting better anytime soon. So I'm glad that My Hero, or the producers of the stage play, are taking these kind of steps, because My Hero is actually one of those properties suited for stage plays, given with in the anime they are covering the My Villain arc, My Villain Academia arc, and the stage play is somewhat going to address that, given that in the synopsis they're putting a little bit more emphasis on the villains and giving more lines towards Toga and Dabi and Twice, like the lovable, lovable gang of the villain trio. So I'm looking forward to this. Hopefully, I can pay for it online as well, and it's easily accessible to global audience.
No, just what like I said, it's definitely interesting that they're having it be in theater and online at the same time. Kind of surprised that with the vaccines that they didn't set up appointments, that it's essentially just like a walk-in thing. But it's, I guess it's sort of like not surprising, because with the way that Japan does things, it's usually more old school in terms of bureaucracy and paperwork, things of that nature. On to the next bit of news. This is a little bit because of your cooking flair that you've had for a minute. Just wanted to bring light to this series known as Kami no Shizuku. It's getting a Western live action series adaptation, and essentially the premise of this work is that this kid was essentially brought up by a wine critic, and uh, his dad ended up passing away, and for the kid to essentially inherit everything that his father owned, is he has to essentially identify what is known as the 12 apostles of wine, which are also known as the legendary drops of God. With him, it's one thing that's interesting is that he's an only child, right? And the thing is, the dad basically puts a time cap on him, where if he can't find the 12 apostles of the legendary wine, then his estate goes to this other wine critic. I guess it was to essentially push the kid into the wine tasting industry. And so I sort of wanted to get your thoughts on that, because, as I said, you've sort of become more of a connoisseur of cooking and things like that. And I know that wine is sort of like on the fringe of that, and sort of like get your thoughts on this work being adapted for a live action movie.
Yeah, to be a sommelier, and that is far from something you can do as a home chef, or a chef that's getting trained by their own education, because there's so many schools that deal with developing your skills as a sommelier. I mean, France is like kind of a big staple of that kind of industry by itself, because sommeliers are usually on par with like the head chef in most upscale restaurants, because they're not only like being a waiter for wine, they're also informing the chefs in the kitchen what goes well in the cooking process of it as well.
Like the food, like what pairs well with the wine, or what wines are best to use while cooking said certain meals, things like that.
Exactly, yeah, because that's their specialty. And this is kind of bittersweet news,
Yeah.
because it's odd that the food genre of mangas haven't been readily adaptable because it's such a visual like pleasing thing to watch the food being cooked. I mean, you can see that anywhere across media with it, TikTok or Instagram. There's always like an anime food compilation, and they
Hmm.
just get millions and millions of views. And it's just one of those things of how antiquated or slow to respond that the anime community or anime industry is, because there are like I don't want to say thousands, but there's like hundreds of good manga that deal with cooking. So like the easy ones to say are like Food Wars and like
Yeah.
Toriko and Restaurant to Another World. And those are kind of like cooking with an isekai element or cooking with a fantasy element. But like with the Drops of God, it's just like you want to learn about the cooking industry or cooking, or how these professionally trained individuals develop their skills. And it's so odd that they're doing a live action adaptation versus doing an anime, because this is basically just Indiana Jones but with wine. Because in the story of Drops of God, he's also battling against his rival, essentially, and it is
Hmm.
two separate things: the 12 Apostle Wines, as well as split into a second part that deals with Drops of God. So it's actually two kind of categories of what he's searching for in this story. And again, it's bittersweet because it's like, when are we going to get a really good just cooking anime? And this does seem like a step in the right direction, but to
Hmm.
say that this is like bittersweet is just because of it should be such an obvious thing to make a cooking anime around like sommeliers or like sushi or like any of the outstanding culinary arts that Japan kind of has perfected. And I hope a studio realizes this pretty soon. So
Yeah, hopefully they're listening to you, and you can get a kickback, maybe a free sushi roller, with their name brand.
I mean, I
Or
already have one, but yeah, it's like one of those weird things of like, are you one of those people that like watching mukbangs? It is like that kind of trended over the past like
Yeah.
couple of years. It's like, yeah, just tap into that market. Just make an anime for people that like watching other people eat too. So it's like one of those things of like, yeah, this is good news, but I wish there was different news.
I hear you. But just to wrap this news up a bit, it should be published in on Hulu in Japan in 2022. Supposed to be an 8 episode series with each episode spanning an hour. And apparently, this had a live action adaptation before. They had a 9 episode live action series for this show back in 2009 from January to March. Now, to wrap up the news, want to talk a little bit about work that's close and near and dear to your heart. It's again going back to Netflix. Look at that, full circle, Jay. But basically, Netflix had announced that its live adaptation of Sunrise's Cowboy Bebop will be set to premiere on November 19th of this year, 2021. And along with these news, they had finally given us a still shot of the three main characters in their costume, where we have Jet, we have Spike, and we have Faye Valentine. And I want to get your thoughts on this.
Along the lines of like, it's been a long time coming. John Cho did injure himself like the first month of filming Cowboy Bebop, and it is like one of those. I don't know if it's inspired, but John Cho has been definitely moving out of his like early movie career of like being Harold or Kumar. Was he Kumar?
No, no, no. He was Harold. He
He
was
was
Harold.
Harold, yeah.
Kumar. Yeah, Kumar
Yeah, he
was the other
also
guy.
did that video movie where like he was searching for his daughter, but everything was shot through like the camera of a laptop. I think it's
Okay.
called Searching. I forgot what it was, but like that came out with the last slew of those other camera-based films like 2 years ago, 3 years ago. But yeah, the casting of who did he play in?
That was
Was he Copper?
Bushmaster.
Yeah, Bushmaster. Yeah,
Bushmaster.
exactly. Yeah, so like he has that intimidating presence as needed for not Jack Black, but Jet Black.
Jack
As
Black is talking about you, Jay.
yeah, which is very interesting that with
Yeah.
the original creator of Cowboy Bebop being producer and consultant, that they're actually taking a original story idea from Cowboy Bebop, so it's not a copy and paste from the anime, which I think is a brilliant idea for them to explore what the Bebop crew was like before they had Radical Ed, because that was something that's always appealing to the start of Cowboy Bebop, is that you have a feel that they're not well together, put together crew, because they're bumbling idiots. No, that's not fair to say. They're bumbling because of their characters. They're not bumbling because of their crew dynamics. They're not like a new crew. They had adventures previously. So with Vicious, again, the antagonist of the series, as well as who is Spike's love interest? Julia being like the main focus of the series is so interesting. So I'm glad that this is finally premiering. I think the date is November 19th. So I will definitely be tuning in to watch this day one, and probably something we need to put on our anime watch list as well.
That's all that I have for the news right there, Jay. So let's, if you're ready, I'm ready to go on to why you made me suffer through Blade.
This is, again, as Sam said, the description or the time codes are in the doobly-doo, which we only have a little bit of time to talk about Blade, because we are coming up with the end of the anime collaboration project between Marvel Entertainment and Studio Madhouse. So this is Blade, which premiered on July 1st, 2011 for a 11 episode run, I believe. I think that was the total number. But this is following up from, originally was Iron Man, that not followed up previously. Okay, so it was Iron Man, then Wolverine, then X-Men, and now Blade, which we have all talked about individually and covered this project, because it's interesting that in 2011 Marvel was like, yeah, let's make anime and let's not have any unique flair to it. Let's not make it anything visually interesting, because of what they're doing with the Star Wars Visions, which is coming out later this year as well. Sorry, in the year 2021, talking about the present now, that this is what they could have done, and which hopefully that they might be doing in the future, because like we talked about, or you opened up with the What If series, that's essentially what this could have been. And if they do the same thing with the Marvel properties, given that we see like an escalation of the content that Disney is going to push with the Marvel property, be it the incorporation of the X-Men, so we saw that before, as well as the Fantastic Four, and just having these like closed off stories, but give it to different studios and say, oh, do what you will with it. But anyways, let's go talking about Blade. This is a action, quote unquote, horror genre tag with the rating of PG-17 and plus for violence and profanity. And the story centers on Blade, a vampire hunter that is looking for the vampire that killed his mother, as well as battling against a mysterious vampire organization in Japan. So set in Japan, revenge tale, Marvel character, let's go. This is the hallmark, the hallmark of these Marvel anime, that there is something to revenge or get settled with, like revenge tale. And this is available on iTunes, Amazon Prime, and Vudu. Where did you actually watch it, Sam?
It was sort of off of Amazon. I didn't realize that it was off of Vudu.
I watched it off Vudu. Yeah, because like that's one of those things of, what does Vudu actually have for their library? It's a weird thing that they have Blade, the Marvel anime series, because the whole Marvel anime have very odd centered streaming options. So it's interesting in the way that they're not all in one place, like collectively, they're scattered about. So even though they are all technically part of the same project or same licensing agreement, but ranking them right now, or maybe we can get to the ranking a little bit later, that the one thing special about Blade, specifically about where it sets among the three other series, is that this is very much a not work of Warren Ellis, which we've talked about before. Warren Ellis being the British comic book writer, that he helped produce the three others, so it like has that comic book touch to it. And it's oddly missing from Blade, that there's a significant lack of like good characters in this, like well written characters, and making the villains at least a little bit appealing. Wow, I am coming right out the gate with my problems about this. But it's odd that in 2011 that all the Wesley Snipe trilogy movie has like been over for basically a decade. The Trinity, which is the last movie, came out in
Mhm.
2004. That was such a perfect model to base the series off of. They even in episode one recreate the opening scene from Blade One with the club feed, like not the whole blood shower kind of scene, but like that
Yeah.
kind of invade the club, kill vampires. Deacon Frost is the antagonist, which Deacon Frost is the antagonist in this series as well, because he's the
Mhm.
dude that killed Blade's mom.
It's interesting that you brought up Deacon because as watching the show and you brought up the movies, I'm glad that you did because that was my first exposure to Blade was in the movies. I know that Blade did show up in the Spider-Man animated series. When he did, that was when I wasn't following the Spider-Man animated series as much as I had liked. So I had missed all the episodes with Blade. So my characterization of Blade was with Wesley Snipes. And you were talking about characterization. So it was very similar to Wesley Snipes his version of Blade in the sense that he was very stoic, but it was different in the sense that in the Wesley Snipes movies, when he fought, you caught a glimpse of his personality, right? Like that was when he was truly himself. You would see him make smirk. He would see you would see him smirk, or he would have these cool one-liners. I think it's mainly because of who Wesley Snipes is because he was essentially an action star at that time. Like he did Demolition Man and was in several movies with Sylvester Stallone and some of the other big beefy action guys. So it's understandable that he would be more natural in his that would be more of his element. However, like because I had watched the dub version of it, and Blade is voiced by Harold Perrineau, I think is how you say his name. But he's basically Link or one of the brothers in the Matrix. He was also in 28 Days Later and Zero Dark 30, and he's a good actor. But his personality type, like the way that his presence is on screen, it's not really one or it's not as commanding as that it's not very commanding to embody what Blade is because like when you hear him he's a little bit soft spoken and you can be stoic and you can be soft spoken but you can still command people's attention whereas with Harold's version of it, it was just mainly soft spoken. There was that sort of loss there, and with all the other characters, you didn't really have anybody for Blade to bounce off of. And because of this show, I went back and I watched the movies, and I was halfway through Blade 2 before we had started this podcast, actually. And I was realizing how much fun that it was and I think it's actually better than Blade One, mainly because you have other types of characters or other archetypes that Blade can bounce off of, so you can essentially see him interact with other people, showing that his character is actually dynamic and it's not just one dimensional.
Yeah,
Just going back to some of your complaints.
yeah, because specifically because of director Guillermo del Toro was in charge of the second Blade movie, and it kind of has
Oh, no
that kind
wonder
of
it was so good.
yeah, it has that flair because he has the I forgot which species of vampires it was, but it's the ones that have the predator mouth essentially. So
Yes.
even in that, like the horror aspect comes through because of Del Toro. But exactly what you said, like Blade is put inside of a party, and I think Donnie Yen shows up in Blade
Dude,
2.
yes, you are so right. Like, I didn't realize that Donnie was in it, and like going back and watching it now, like I'm such a big Donnie fan, and now seeing him, I'm just like, holy smokes, this man got jacked for the role. Like he just like when you see Donnie, like I've always usually see him in Ip Man. He's slender, he's very cut, right? But like he's athletic, but he is just bulked up, has all the muscles in Blade 2. I'm like, he is ready for business, man.
Right, because even it has like the Ron Perlman casting, who
Hmm.
would be Hellboy, and it's interesting that again, like what Del Toro attaches to is like what occurs in the comic book with the Midnight Suns, which again, I'm not really familiar with, but it's like all of Marvel's kind of darker, more adult, kind of supernatural
Mm-hmm.
characters. I think most recently like Moon Knight was added to the Midnight Suns, but
Yeah.
I know Midnight Suns from being like Mobius. Oh no, not more Mobius, but
Morpheus. Oh no no no! You're right. No no no. You're right. You're right. Morbius. Morbius. Morbius is
Morbius
his name.
and yeah,
You're right.
Ghost
Yeah.
Rider. But yeah, Blade's a part of that as well. And I think there was
Okay.
like some kind of rumor back during Comic Con that Marvel was going to go in that direction with the reboot of Blade. They're trying to do is that they're going to try to capture that Midnight Sun aesthetic or that demographic of like older Marvel content. But anyways, yeah, so that kind of plays into the second
Mhm.
Blade movie, but maybe let's not talk about the better, superior version of the Blade franchise, because that is so what works with Iron Man is that, again, talking about, let's collectively talk about all the Marvel anime series, but
Yeah.
yeah, that they are being held against the standard that the Marvel Cinematic Universe is doing. That version of Tony Stark kind of feels like Robert Downey Jr., but this version of Blade doesn't feel like Wesley Snipes at all. And maybe it's the
Yeah.
like what you keyed into is that maybe they were going in a more respectful Japanese swordsman kind of aesthetic that he's like contemplating his existence or his goals or ideas, but it just sells him kind of short of who the audience know Blade to be. He's not
Yeah.
really that kind of quiet swordsman because even in his quest of killing vampires, which you can kind of get behind, but then it's shadowed against is her name
Makoto.
Makoto, who in the first episode gets saved by Blade, who kills her father because the father's trying to kill her, and she's like, "I vow vengeance against you, Blade, for saving me." And
It's
and
just like, what are you doing?
Blade is just like, "Yeah, I get it," and she's so much of a nuisance throughout these at least these 3 episodes that we did for the 3 episode test. You're like, wouldn't Blade just kill her? Wouldn't Wesley Snipes just kill her? And I think that's just a whole detriment to the series. Like,
Yeah.
she's unsympathetic. He's responding in a way that he shouldn't. And with the Marvel animes, we've had like Emma Frost and Yokio from the Wolverine series, like these strong female characters. And
Yeah.
then to close up the series of anime, like she isn't really anything.
No, no, no. Like you said, we have this annoying twerp, and I mean, to be fair, just to compare it back to Blade One, we had we did see Wesley Snipes have to deal with an annoying female character at first, but this was just a human that was essentially thrown into the world of vampires, right? And so I guess he was a bit more understanding because she didn't know about the world, whereas Makoto, she grew up as a vampire hunter, right? And she saw her dad turn in front of her eyes. So her acting the way that she did, she was essentially acting like somebody who was new to the vampire game. And that's what makes her not as endearing as the aforementioned character from earlier.
Exactly, because yeah, even in the first episode, like we have that recreation scene of the Blade One movie, throwing a werewolf just for the hell of it, I guess. Then yeah, Makoto vows vengeance. In the second episode, again from the first movie, I think is like there's this subplot of the blood farm and like
Yeah.
corrupt cops. For some reason, there's vampire cats and a water tiger monster, I think.
No, 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 no. Like what I was going to say was like that was one thing that I do like that this iteration of Blade does, right? Because essentially he starts globetrotting, right? He starts out in Japan, but he's starting to follow Deacon Frost, right? And so Deacon Frost and the vampires are international, so he's not just stuck in Japan, which is one thing that I like, especially for an anime, for a character that travels as much as Blade. And as he's going to different parts of the world, he is essentially getting exposed to different species of vampires, essentially tackling different vampire lore from different cultures. So in the third episode, they're going to the Philippines, and they're essentially attacked by a flying species of vampires that look like harpies. From watching Trace, I had mentioned Trace before, which is essentially I guess I would say it's an anime, but it's more of like just like an animation adaptation of a comic book that's from the Philippines, and some of their lore of some of the monsters and stuff that they have something akin to a vampire that acts very similar to the creatures that we see Blade fight. So it does expand our knowledge, or at least our understanding of what vampires are in terms of like different cultures. So that was one, like I said, that's one thing that's very interesting that this anime takes into account, because it takes a sort of supernatural approach to the world of vampires, and they have Blade as the epicenter of that.
Yeah, it's the one selling point of like these three episodes is that they do take the idea that all cultures, or at least some cultures, I guess, take the vampire mythos and changes it in a certain way to match its people. Because what you're talking about, the Filipino vampire, I have a Filipino instructor at my school, and it's the Manduros, not Manduros, but Mandugogs. And they're
Mm-hmm.
like, as you said, they're harpies. They're exclusively female vampires. And you can go, and I got a whole backstory about the lore and the folklore of these vampires. But it is essentially what is excellent about the first three episodes is that you can see where this is going with 11 episodes. Like, oh, he might go to Egypt and like tackle these
Mm-hmm.
kind of vampires, or go to Russia, like, because he ends up in Russia in the end of Blade 1 searching for Deacon. Or no, he's already killed Deacon. Sorry,
Yeah.
spoilers alerts for that movie. But yeah, he ends up in Russia. And you kind of get that sense of there are different species of vampires, and they tie into each country's lore of that vampire, which, again, what these Marvel anime have done is that they've put on top of these Marvel characters like Japanese lore or mythology, like getting multiple ideas that maybe a Western creator wouldn't naturally associate with their character, which again
Yeah.
is like a credit to what Marvel was thinking, giving somewhat of a free range, as well as like Warren Ellis's ability to adapt properties across cultures. And even in that third episode, you get introduced to probably the best character in the series. I'm projecting that Noah Van Helsing and his
Yes.
dog, which is such a cool idea that a vampire hunter just takes his dog around with him. It got this strong vibes of Will Smith and I Am Legend vibes to it.
Mm-hmm.
And the only bit of comic book relevance I see with specifically with Noah Van Helsing is from the Tomb of Dracula, which is kind of where
Mm-hmm.
Blade started with his origin. And in this series, it just looks like Noah Van Helsing is the Whistler character
Yeah,
from the
from the
Wesley
movies.
Snipes movies. So it's odd that they are matching like kind of the same ideas, kind of miss out on the magic that Wesley Snipes was. And it's odd that in 2006, do you know about this, Sam, that there was actually another Blade series?
I feel like I don't want to know about it, but no, no, no.
You don't want to know about it, but I'm going to talk about it because, yeah, because again, like looking at where this 2011 adaptation is following a American series called Blade the series back in 2006,
Yeah.
where sorry, they had they had a 13 episode TV series, and the dude that played Blade was Kurt Jones.
Kurt Jones. Why is
Yeah,
that?
he's a rapper.
What?
He's a hardcore
Okay.
American rapper, also known by Sticky. And I
Okay.
just watched the first episode of it, and it's like it falls in the category of like that Aquaman TV series that they tried, or the Wonder Woman.
No, like the Super Friends. That
Uh,
that type.
no, it's just like a weird live adaptation before like they came around to like the CW kind of
Oh, a
aspect.
live. Oh, okay, live action adaptation.
Live,
I
yeah,
thought I thought we were talking about like this rapper like doing voiceover work. Oh, so now it's a little bit more cringy.
yeah, exactly. So like technically, the line of Wesley Snipes Ricky Jones and the Mahershala Ali whenever we get around to the Marvel
Hmm.
Cinematic Universe Blade, which is probably not going to happen for a while since the last news I heard from it was that they're still looking for a director. To say that this 2011 series is so weirdly situated, like it could have benefited a lot from just making a clone copy of Blade or the Wesley Snipes version of it
Yeah.
and kind of keeping in people's mind who Blade is as a character is such a missed opportunity. And I think that's why this is the worst. This is the worst Marvel anime series is because of the missed
Oh,
opportunity. So, do you
yeah.
think this is the worst, Sam? Do you think this outshines or dims compared against Iron Man, which I think is like the second worst?
Oh no, no, no! It's leagues and above Iron Man. Can we go in our list order now, or
Oh yeah, yeah, we can do that. Yeah.
okay?
So, what
Yeah,
is your worst one?
my worst one's Iron Man.
Oh wow. Okay. Okay. Interesting. All right. My worst one is definitely Blade.
Why is Blade worse than Iron Man for you? Like you
Um,
said, just because of missed opportunities.
well, missed opportunities just because of like Iron Man had Tony Stark kind of playing Tony Stark, or at least a version that's not as charismatic as Robbie Downey
Mhm.
Jr. was, and it's like it feels like the character of Iron Man, essentially. You know, the demon in the bottle, like any storyline where he's dealing with like the consequences of his technology
Is that
obsession or
yeah?
dealing with like the fallout of him being Tony Stark. So like I can follow that through line to see like, oh, this is a Marvel character that I'm familiar with. While Japan has done so many outstanding vampire stories, this just seems very lacking that they could have
Oh
just put
yeah,
on top of like Blade character
definitely.
and then telling a good vampire story.
Yeah, no, no, no. I see what you're saying because like even because I've been watching Blood Sea, and even though like that series seems to be a bit of a mix mash of what they're trying to do, it's still better than this Blade anime. And as I said, Blood Sea is not their best vampire series that I've seen by the Japanese people.
All right, so is your third spot Blade then?
No, it's Wolverine.
Ah, Wolverine. Okay, okay. I'm going to put in my third spot then Iron Man.
No, that makes sense with what you just said.
So your second spot?
My second spot's Blade.
Oh, okay. So it's really high up on the list. Okay. And then my second spot would be Wolverine then.
Oh, that hurts. That hurts so much. Why is Wolverine in your second spot?
Oh, because of posh boy aesthetic to Wolverine. Again, like he gets redesigned in both of our, I guess, our favorite Marvel anime, X-Men. So like that feels
Yes.
more Wolverine-ish. There's like some elements of like the choreographies, like kind of on par across all the Marvel anime series, but like Wolverine has like the most well choreographed scenes given the action that's needed for like, oh, he's a samurai in Japan, of course,
Yeah.
and
No.
going
No.
against the Silver
Yeah.
Samurai that we talked about in detail in that episode. So like, there's enough positives to say like, oh, these are like point 0.5 better than each other. Well, you know, for me, Blade is at the bottom, but you know, like point 0.5 better than that.
Uh.
So
No. 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 You're right about that. That the action is a lot better in Wolverine than it is in Blade.
you know, I mean, again, to talk about a positive real quick, like they do like a extra layer of choreography on inside of Blade that they didn't do in Wolverine. Like they do like freeze frames, and they do kind of like the text on screen kind of pop up that we talked about in Katana Gatari.
Yeah, as you said earlier, like they take a more reserved samurai approach. So we see Blade, I think, does like what the Demon Slayer representation would be like his first breathing style, or like his first quote unquote form. We've seen that a couple times. So he may have like other forms that he has mastered or made himself, which would be cool to see later on. But it's still lacking. Like even though like we see like the freeze frame and like the text popping up, just still like the action being the prelude to those freeze frames is not very good. It's borderline janky. Whereas with the action scenes with Wolverine, it is more smooth and it's more fluid, and it is more akin to Wolverine's feral style of fight.
Exactly. And just to like maybe cap off the Blade discussion with like maybe a positive is just that there seems to be a little bit more of an effort to make the music a little bit more stylized, I think, because maybe it's like one of those things like, oh, the cool black character needs to have good backing music, kind of essentially. Because I did notice like a lot of funk, maybe jazz saxophone kind of going on in the background. So like that's something I actually picked up on, which I think has been lacking in the other series. That music backing tracks that actually added to what was going on. So there's a positive in the book of Blade, the animated series, or Marvel anime. So both of our number ones are obviously the X-Men series.
And just to jump off on a little bit about the music, as you said, one thing that was very interesting was even though the intro music wasn't good, it was catchy and it felt at home with the theme of Blade and the vampire, or at least like the dark themes that they're trying to go with. It very much reminded me of the anime Witchblade. Are you familiar with that, Jay, or no?
I know the name, but I haven't experienced the property.
Okay. So essentially, Witchblade is another anime adaptation of an American comic series by the same name, underneath a sort of a lesser known property known as not property, or like comic line known as Top Cow. And essentially, it deals with some of the darker themes and the hard rock elements that go along with it. It is very good as well, and it's not a very good anime. I wouldn't suggest it to anybody, but I have nostalgia with it because that was my first exposure to Witchblade, and then I ended up reading the comic book series and the other Top Cow series too, and I'm very thankful for it. So it takes that spot of it's near and dear to me because of nostalgia, and I like it even though I know it's bad, and that theme song for Blade sort of brings those feelings to my mind to the forefront. And as I said, like it with the music, like it feels at home with them trying to deal with like dark themes and vampire hunting and things like that. So very very good music choice for the intro. Even though it could be a little bit better as well.
Yeah, but again, compared against the
Mm-hmm.
opening from X-Men is kind of like not really saying much because they did
Oh,
again put some effort or emphasis on the character introduction for like newcomers to Marvel properties. So just
mm-hmm.
to summarize, like my points is that yes, I love. Okay, love is a strong word. I was least annoyed by the X-Men series, given that like the character design is from the dude or the mangaka that is responsible for Afro Samurai, as well as is being the same director of that series. The emphasis on like a strong, resonant comic book element of like the post Dark Phoenix arc, as well as the other or Iron Man has the Extremis arc going on, and then the Wolverine has like the Silver Samurai uh, comic book influence arc going on as well. Blade doesn't really have one, but that's why I put the X-Men series above the rest. Is that the design is interesting. Emma Frost, Cyclops make very compelling characters and what they're dealing with throughout the story. And then Blade is lacking that feel from Warren Ellis being a consultant or at least producer. And the one positive that they do with the Blade series is go into the different species of vampires. Hopefully that carries through all 11 episodes. But for right now, it is definitely a rebury for me. How about you, Sam?
If we're talking about works that make you want to go back and rewatch the good Blade iterations, then I would resurrect. But no, I would rebury this guy in a heartbeat as well. And it's very sad too because I feel as though like with minor characters like Blade, they can do very very well if they are given their due credit. I mean, we're getting a live action movie of Mobius, which is, I'm sorry, Morbius, which is, that vampire that you had mentioned earlier. And he started off as a Spider-Man villain. And, they're giving him his own full-blown movie, and that trailer makes him seem so interesting. It's don't tell me that it can't be done with a character that has had 3 movies under his pocket. Even though his personality is hard to work with, it can be done to where you can give him a good story. And from not the deep dive, but from the soft dive that I did, he does a lot of stuff, Blade, uh and having to deal with Deacon Frost, and having to deal with Dracula and Dracula's usurpers and themes like that. So you can definitely do more with his character than making him seem like just a genocidal guy with a chip on his shoulder.
Right, and it might just be one of those changing times kind of things of like vampires are so 2000 late kind of things. So it's interesting to see if how the Mahershala Ali version is going to differ, or at least set itself apart from the Wesley Snipes. Because I remember strongly in like 2019, Wesley Snipes was like, "Oh yeah, of course I'll come back to play um, Blade if Marvel asked me to," which kind of has been like the meta for like most people, that yeah, we want Wesley Snipes again because that is just everything superheroes was like for our age group growing up. Essentially, it's like this is what a cool hero is, or this is what a hero means to people, and it's just lost on the series. So again, it's a firm reburied for both of us, Sam, on this last 2011 Marvel anime series Blade, which we might come back for the movie, or actually there are 2 movies associated with the Marvel anime. One being Technovore for the Iron Man property, as well as the Black Widow Punisher movie as well. So
Okay,
we'll
that
see.
wasn't bad. That one was actually good.
All right. Well, at least it's okay. Good. At least you've seen both of them and has some kind of initial. I haven't seen them at all. So if we feel vibing with that for a future episode, we'll come back to it. But that brings a close to our discussion on Blade, the animated series, not anime series, Marvel anime. And the next episode is a anime by your picking, which is Kami-sama Dolls, I think, or Kami-sama
Yes,
Dolls.
you're right. It's Kami-sama Dolls, and I don't remember synopsis, and hopefully it's not another detective duo. But I'm looking forward to it, at least to get something of the taste of Blade out of my mouth, or at least the Blade anime. But other than that, that's just to recap, like you said, a hard berry from the both of us on Blade. And with that, Jay, what have you got to say?
Oh, I have a public service announcement for everyone, so please open your ears and listen carefully. Some motherfuckers are always trying to ice skate uphill.